Today we're talking about brand awareness. So let's run through a couple scenarios and see what they mean to you. Scenario number one, you're driving down the highway. You've been driving for 3-4 hours. You've got two kids in the back seat. They're young, they're hungry, they're bored, they're crying, they're yelling. It's a very stressful environment. And you look ahead on the highway and you see some golden arches. Immediately, your recognition of what those golden arches means to you is really the whole experience that you can have if you decide to pull over at that establishment. You know what price point it's going to be, you know what the service is going to be like, you can anticipate every piece of the experience from beginning to finish, right? There's a bit of a brand promise baked into those golden arches. That's a really strong example of brand awareness. Let's talk about scenario two. You're driving down the same highway and you're in the right lane, you're going the speed limit, and some guy in a big black truck cuts you off and slows down, right? And you think to yourself, you look at the label, the maker mark on the back of that vehicle, and you think, of course it's that guy. Of course he's driving a whatever. That's another example of brand awareness. And that's one that is less controlled by the maker of the vehicle and more by the type of person who typically drives that vehicle. There's a bit of a stereotype kind of baked in, right? So brand awareness is not just your recognition of what a logo is and the company behind it, but it's really baked in. It's that promise of what you're going to experience when you encounter that brand. So think about your company for a moment, your brand. How strong is your brand awareness? What is brand recognition like? How does the market view your brand promise? Is it doing sales on your behalf? Is it helping you bring in more business? So when one of your potential clients in the market is looking for a service or solution that you offer, and they look at your company, the first thing that they have to ask themselves is, what does this brand mean to me? Do I trust it? Is this company going to be able to help me solve my problem? The brand promise is really the piece that answers that question. And it comes long before the, brand recognition, brand recall, anything like that. The brand promise is the thing that is going to really drive that conversion. And so you need to have a very clear and concise brand promise that means something in place of your brand logo when people see you online or at an event or something. So we look at brand awareness as a series of three things that kind of feed into it. There's brand recall, there's brand recognition, and brand reputation. Your brand reputation is how people are aware of your company. So within brand reputation, you have kind of two different sets of factors. You've got internal and external. Internal includes things like brand promise, your engagement. Are you engaging with people who talk about you online? Are you creating a positive reputation through your conversations that you have with your market? And your work itself. Does your work stand for itself? Are you doing a good job, right? And that's kind of table stakes for being in business, but you would be surprised. On the external side, you have network and referrals, so people talking about you when you're not in the room. You have social media, so people having conversations about you, either in private messages or in comments on posts and stuff like that. And you have paid endorsements. So if you're a larger business and you're able to pay, say, influencers or celebrities to, or even the news for that matter, to position your brand in front of their audience, then that's a paid endorsement. Those all feed into what your brand reputation is. Specifically though, today we're going to talk about your brand promise and what does that mean for success and for growing revenue for your business. If you can do one thing to drive more brand awareness, greater recognition, recall, and brand relationship, it would be to always deliver on your brand promise. So what is a brand promise and how do you develop and deliver on it? Well, you start with your market and you understand what their problems are. They've got problem 1, problem 2, problem 3. You really need to get into your ideal client profiles, your ICPs, and understand what are the things that they are trying to solve, what keeps them up at night. And then you look internally at the services and solutions that you offer. So you have service 1, service 2, service 3. More often than not, that should hopefully speak to the problems that your audience is facing. But the problem is if this is where you end, and this is where most companies end, they basically have a list of services that they offer. And a list of services that you offer is great, but it doesn't really paint a clear picture, nor does it paint a brand promise for your audience. So you have to build a promise. You have to build an offer, as we often talk about it. that offer has to be greater than the sum of your services. So service 1 plus service 2 plus service 3, those are just things that you do. But when you package that together, think of an apple pie. If you go and you buy a crust and you buy some apples and you put them in a bag, you've got a bag with crust and apples in it. But if you take that home and you peel the apples and you skin them and you simmer them with cinnamon and you have that in your pie crust and you bake it for 45 minutes to an hour, then you have an apple pie. And that's much more meaningful than a list of services or list of ingredients that go into it, right? So you have to over deliver on your brand promise again and again. You need to become known as a brand, as a company, for what your company stands for. This is your brand reputation, and it really comes from, internally at least, your brand promise and delivering on that over and over. So repetition is the key. If you look at the ClickX strategy, the words that we use deserve so much more than a brand strategy. We've got this in our LinkedIn posts. We've got very similar language and promises across every one of our touch points, and our customers buy into that and they like the work that we do, and that becomes our reputation. So when you start having people speak on your behalf, that becomes part of your brand reputation. But it all stems from having a significant brand promise that you were able to over deliver on again and again and deliver to the market.